Hey guys, welcome back to the channel for We Talk Mental Health. My name is Karen, as always, and we are here today to jump right back in to the world of mental health and mental illnesses. I took a couple weeks off. I went on vacation. I laid on some beaches. I did lots of fun things in lots of fun different places. I spent Christmas in Florida with my dad. But now we're back and we're well rested and we're ready to jump back in. So, for the first video of 2019, we are going to talk about depression. From here on out, we're going to jump into a lot of specific diagnoses with some other videos here and there. But for the first real diagnostic video for We Talk Mental Health's YouTube channel, we're going to talk about depression. We're going to talk about some myths. We're going to talk about what it is and some of the different characteristics and the signs and the symptoms, and then some of the different specific mood disorders that we use as clinical professionals to diagnose individuals in the field. So, real quick though, I just wanted to say that I hope that you all had a really great New Year's. I watched the ball drop in my office in the ER by myself, working an overnight, so that was fun, but we made it. We made it through the holidays. They can be really hard for a lot of people, and I just want to let you all know that I'm super proud of you for pushing through and doing what you need to do to take care of yourself when there's so much stress and so much going on. So, I'll stop rambling. Let's jump into it. Moving forward, when I talk about, and historically, when I've talked about different diagnostic disorders on We Talk Mental Health via Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, this is the book that I use. This is the DSM-5. This is the Holy Grail. This is our Bible, and this is what any and all professionals in the mental health field use to help us diagnose individuals correctly. And it is something that I reference all the time. I have, because this thing is massive, I have a pocket version which goes with me everywhere. So I'm not just talking out of my ass, and I'm not going on Wikipedia and finding all of this information about mental health disorders. This is what I studied. The most important book I used in my graduate level education. The topic of today's video is depression. And before we jump into some real hard-hitting facts about depression, I wanted to talk about a couple of myths that I feel like are pretty common in regards to depression. One of them is that you can just snap out of it, that it's something that's, brought on by like periods of sad times and hard times that make you sad. And it's not that. It's so much more complex than that. Depression is more than just sadness or grief. You can be sad, you can grieve in situations, but when it becomes elevated to a point where it's impacting your daily functioning and your daily lives and your relationships, that's when we start to consider whether or not you're entering kind of a realm of depression. So it's different, and it's one thing that I want people to know and make sure that people are putting out there and educating others about, is that depression is not just sadness, and it's not something that you can just snap out of. It changes your brain chemistry. On kind of that note, one of the other myths that I encounter a lot as a social worker is that if you're depressed and you go on antidepressants or medications, that you're going to be on them forever. And that's not true at all. I don't believe in pushing meds. I believe that, there are other forms of treatment that can be helpful, but I do believe that sometimes a person enters a point in their mental illness where they may need medication in order to help them get back to a baseline. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, and I wish people would stop making people believe that that's something to be ashamed of, because it's not. Medication can help a person to manage the symptoms of their mental illness, regardless of which one it is. And it can be really helpful, but it's not a cure-all, and you can get to a point in your treatment where you no longer need it, because you can use medication to help you get back to your baseline so that you're able to actually work through the underlying issues that are causing the depression in the first place. Because sometimes without the meds, it can be really hard to kind of dig yourself out of that hole. Lots of people that I've talked to throughout my career have defined it like that. It's a black hole. It's like this shadow and this constant like cloud over your head that you can't get out of. We'll save kind of my own personal experiences with depression and anxiety for another video. One of the biggest myths that I see as a provider, depression in this case, is developed because a person lacks willpower, or they believe that it's like a flaw in somebody's personality, and it's just not true. It's one of the most diagnosed mental illnesses in the entire world. It's a mood disorder that causes severe symptoms that affect how a person feels and thinks and how they handle daily activities. It affects how they sleep and how they eat and how they work and how they interact with other people. And there's specific criteria, which we'll talk about a little bit, in order for a person to be diagnosed with these disorders. So there's a couple different more specific disorders under the umbrella of mood disorders. One of them is disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, which basically means that a person has severe, like recurrent temper outbursts that manifest verbally or physically that are unproportional to a situation. In order for a person to be diagnosed with that, the outbursts have to be present for 12 or more months, and they need to happen like 3 or more times a week. Major depressive disorder is present for a 2-week period where the person has a depressed mood for most of the day, nearly every day. There could be loss of interest, insomnia or hypersomnia, fatigue, loss of energy, feelings of worthlessness, diminished ability to think or concentrate, recurring thoughts of death or suicidal ideation. And persistent depressive disorder has the same characteristics as major depressive disorder, but the time frame is a lot longer. So in order for a person to be diagnosed with persistent depressive disorder, those symptoms have to be present for at least 2 years. There's also postpartum depression and depression that could be caused due to substance abuse, or depression that's caused from a medical condition. Those are all diagnosable disorders in the DSM-5. In my realm of work and what I do, because I don't interact with people for a long period of time, if we see somebody for the first time, we typically give them an unspecified diagnosis of, in this case, depression, which means that they have some characteristics and some signs and some symptoms of the disorder, but we're not comfortable with giving a full-blown diagnosis of major depressive disorder or persistent depressive disorder because we haven't developed that therapeutic relationship. We don't know this person well enough to kind of put a more specific diagnosis on that. And I think that that's just best practice. So in general, as a provider, we look for specific signs and symptoms of a disorder. And the signs and symptoms of depression are feelings of sadness, tearfulness, feelings of emptiness and hopelessness, worthlessness, anger outbursts or irritability, loss of interest or pleasure in most of all normal activities, sleep disturbance, including insomnia or sleeping too much, tiredness, lack of energy. Small tasks take a lot of effort. Reduced appetite and weight loss, or increased cravings for food, kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, and weight gain. Anxiety, agitation, and restlessness can also be a sign of depression. Sometimes anxiety and depression go hand in hand. Slowed thinking, speaking or body movements, trouble thinking or concentrating or making decisions or remembering things. A person's memory can be greatly impacted if they are experiencing a depressive episode. Frequent or recurrent thoughts of death, suicidal thoughts, or actual suicide attempts. Those are all warning signs, and those are what we look for. So if you or somebody that you know is experiencing any of those things, if you feel like you can't get out of this hole that you are in, if you don't find enjoyment in anything, if things that were once really important to you aren't feeling like they're worth doing anymore, if you're withdrawing from people, if your relationships are being impacted, it might be worth reaching out to a provider. A lot of community mental health centers, at least in the area where I live, you can just go in and walk in and get an intake. Go through an assessment, have specific tests done. We use a lot of scales and rating tools along with the assessment, along with getting to know you as a person, along with getting a history. That information will help us give you a more effective diagnosis so that we can create a treatment plan. treatment is huge. A person getting treatment can make all the difference in the world. And there's so much stigma around mental illness and depression in general that it prevents people from getting the help that they need. So their mental illnesses become chronic mental illnesses, and they fall further and further and further into the depression. Medication can be really helpful, as I've said earlier, along with psychotherapy, in order to provide you with coping mechanisms and tools to help you deal with or work through whatever may have been a precipitating factor in the events leading to your depression. The big thing that I want everybody to remember is that depression can affect anybody at any age. The other really important thing that I want you all to remember, and if there's anything you take from this video today, I want it to be this: depression is treatable. It is manageable. It could be something that you deal with periodically, situationally sometimes, or it could be a persistent battle that you deal with every single day. Regardless of where you're at, it's treatable. So if you're struggling right now, if any of those symptoms that I've listed earlier are things that you feel like you battle every single day, please reach out. Please feel free to contact me. I will do my best to help point you in the right direction. If you're a person watching this and you have never battled depression, but you know somebody that has, this is the first step to making sure that you're as supportive as you can be. Learning the symptoms, doing the research, educating yourself on what it means and what can be helpful and how to interact with somebody is step one. Step two is encouraging them to get help. Step three would be to continue being empathetic and to continue being a support for them and not blaming them, because some days are going to be harder than others, and that's when they're really going to need you. So being patient and being kind can really go a long way. So I hope I haven't rambled too much. I probably have, because that's me. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments. Would really appreciate it if you guys subscribed and followed me on Instagram and Twitter. The handles will be in the description box. But I appreciate you all watching. I hope that you enjoyed the video. I hope that I answered some questions. I hope that you learned something. And I will always be here if anybody needs me. So feel free to contact me. The DMs are always open on IG and Twitter. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. And I will see you next week.